Welcome everyone to another episode of GetTech Smart. I am your host, Flo Nicholas, and I love talking tech. I love exposing the audience to all the wonderful tech things that are happening right here in New Hampshire. So for today's episode, we're gonna get just slightly serious because there's a lot going on right now, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. Cybersecurity threats have become a big problem. And with my guest today, we're going to dive deep into that and how we need more cybersecurity professionals. But how can we get cybersecurity professionals? So I look forward to talking with my guests, and we're going to get the show started. And today we have, you might have seen him before. He's been here before. So I have Peter LaMonica, the head of computer science at Manchester Community College, back again. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me back.
No problem. And I have Ann Banks. You're with the Apprenticeship New Hampshire. So it's a pleasure to have you here. So you just heard me talk about that cybersecurity is a big problem, right? And one of the biggest issues also is that there's probably over 700,000 roles that are open. I think that number is probably a little bit higher. How can we combat the threats that are happening right now? Before we started recording, I mentioned that Twitter was hacked. We have issues with Google, Cisco, Twilio. I mean, there's a long list of these big tech companies that are getting hacked. So what do we do?
So I think that, in thinking in what you're saying with the larger companies being hacked, imagine what the smaller companies are going through who don't have reams and reams of people, right? So, all organizations have a responsibility to have cybersecurity in there and in their space and hire that tech. Really looking, we have to build a pipeline, and we have to use all of our resources available to bring people in. I'm with Apprenticeship New Hampshire, and we really feel that registered apprenticeship is a way that we can do that, and in partnership with Manchester Community College and some of our other colleges of really developing that. We have to train people to be able to combat this, and we need that in forces.
Okay, so before we loop you in, Peter, so the Biden administration this summer had a summit to address the issues that are going on with cybersecurity. So, it's a concern when they got to have a summit to talk about it. And one of the things that came out of this summit is this need for this 120-day sprint. And the sprint is to promote existing apprenticeship programs and to create more apprenticeship programs. Because there's holes in the employment gap. We don't have enough people. So we've got to train the people. So let's start with, what is a cybersecurity apprenticeship?
Well, what we've done is we put together 3 programs. The cybersecurity is the most technical of the 3 that we put together. And what we've done in Manchester Community College is we've done all of the paperwork that the employer is going to need to do, or most of it, up front. We've created the classes. We know where the students need to go. We've figured out what certifications that these employees, the potential employees, will need. And we've got that all set up ahead of time. We're already teaching the classes. We've already got students who have gone through a lot of these classes, so we're ready to go. We're just trying to get the employers now on board so that we can start matching students or potential employees up with the employers.
Yeah. One of the things I also saw is, there's this big push for a lot of these companies. For Microsoft, for example, maybe a year or 2 ago, they came out with funding where they want to team up with community colleges because they're like, listen, we see the gap, but we need the employees. And to get the employees, the best place for us is to team up with community colleges. And they have this apprenticeship program. But here's what people need to know is these are paid apprenticeship programs.
Yes.
So can we talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So, what our program is at Manchester Community College and what we work with in Apprenticeship New Hampshire, we're federally funded with the U.S. Department of Labor. And so we build federally registered apprenticeship programs. And so there's components that go along with that. And the first one is that it's industry driven. All of the careers and occupations are really built with industry input. And then it is a paid occupation with a progressive pay wage going through there. So, somebody may come on at a little bit lower rate than someone who's fully qualified, but then by the time they end, they are, making what somebody would be making as an entry level person would be making. And I think one of the biggest pieces is that it's an earn and learn model, right? So there's those first two components, but the real nuts and bolts of a registered apprenticeship is really that structured on-the-job learning paired with a mentor and with related instruction or supplemental instruction that complements what they're doing. So, an apprentice gets to be working and earning an income, going to school, learning that theory, and then applying it at the employer that is building their talent pipeline.
Right.
So it's a win-win across the board. And I think another really big piece of registered apprenticeship is that and one of the goals is to really reduce some of the barriers that people face. We know that there's people that are interested in joining cybersecurity and getting into tech. They see the writing on the wall. They know that these occupations are lucrative, they're well paying, but the barriers sometimes to get into them is really a great challenge. Before we started, Peter had mentioned a report that was written in May of 2020 with New Hampshire Employment Security and, the Sector Partner Initiative that was funded by the Employment Training Administration. And I was blown away there were 1,000 IT jobs that were posted that required a bachelor's degree and 3 to 5 years of experience.
Yeah.
In 1,000 jobs, it's crazy. And all that kept going through my head was the number of candidates that wouldn't be able to get their foot in the door. And then the number of employers that are waiting for those people to finish and get that experience when they could be hiring people in training them to their needs while they're getting their education and really presenting an avenue for the people who want to get into those roles.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really excellent point because I think that's one of the things that came out of the Biden administration summit is trying to close that gap, especially for women and underrepresented tech talent. And some people are discouraged when they start seeing the qualifications like, oh, I gotta have a bachelor's degree, but I just have a high school degree or a GAD, but I still want to learn. Let's talk about the breakdown because it is learn as you go.
Right.
But what is the actual structure of the classes and courses?
Flo, one of the things that you kind of alluded to and Ann did too was that they're looking for higher level degrees. Some of these folks, and when you come in and you come out of a school, you're learning it the way that school set it up.
Right.
And the same with me. You're learning it the way we've set it up. But with the apprenticeship program, it's an on-the-job training thing. So the employer gets input into what that student is learning and how. So they're getting a better person through the apprenticeship program than I think they probably would have if they're taking somebody with a 4-year degree.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the thing, you mentioned something that's an excellent point. They're learning on-the-job training for that specific employer.
Right.
So they're learning that specific employer's systems. Right. So even if you have somebody with a 4-year college degree, they still got to come in and they still have to learn your systems. Now you have someone that you can say they need to be able to have Python, for example, just throwing it out there, or we need them to be able to do data analytics. So I mean, this is a fantastic model, and like you said, it's a win-win situation for both the employee and the employer.
Yes.
So one of the things that people tend to ask is, well, what are these courses? Because is this something that I think I can be able to handle? Is it too techy? Is it too technical? Am I coding? What are they really learning? Like, what's the typical course?
So there's, like Peter had mentioned earlier, there's 3 occupations, and they all build upon on another. So somebody could come in, an employer could adopt all 3 occupations, and they could start with a 1-year, roughly 1-year tech support role.
Okay.
Specialist role. And so Peter can speak more to the classes, and then the on-the-job training, they have to do their A+ certifications. They're going through, you're the tech person, I'm the workforce person, so you can probably handle all of those terminologies better. And then they can move into the network support specialist, which will have the same courses and the same on-the-job training as the tech support, so somebody could start there and then get a leg up going into the network. And then the same with the cybersecurity. So they all build on each other.
So what are those 3 courses again? So it's not just cybersecurity that they can get apprenticeship for. What are the 3 areas that people can look at?
The 3 occupations is a tech support specialist, a network support specialist, and a cybersecurity support technician. So you can talk about the tech pieces.
And what we've done is we put together a program that uses external certifications. So we're partnered with CompTIA. And they helped us put this all together. When the students leave us, so after they've taken our classes, they're actually taking the certification exam as part of the class. So they're taking the A+ exam, they're taking the Network Plus exam, and they're taking the Security Plus exam. So they have all of that behind them by the time they get through the cybersecurity one.
Yeah, and you're training them and you're helping them, understand what is needed for them to actually pass these exams.
Yeah, it's not a boot camp.
Yeah.
It's 16 weeks, and so they get to absorb that material. And we've got a very good success rate for passing those CompTIA exams. And we help the students set that up. We're actually a testing center, so students can test right there on campus with us. And by having these certifications, that makes them much more valuable to the employer, because the employer knows that they know this stuff. They've been tested. And CompTIA is known worldwide. Everybody knows CompTIA. When I was hiring technicians, if you didn't have a certification from them, I probably wouldn't even have looked at your resume.
Yeah, and these guidelines were built by CompTIA, so they developed national guidelines for organizations to adopt, and so that's what Manchester Community College did, and they aligned it with their classes. And just going back to, if I could, a point that you had asked of, what if, is this going to be too rigorous for me, or what if it doesn't work? I think the nicest, most beneficial piece about a registered apprenticeship program is that you have the support of an instructor while you're in the class, then you have the support of the employer, and then you have that support of that mentor. So really all of those things, there's such a wraparound for the individual that if they are struggling with something, there's people to go to for support, which makes a huge difference. And it really, from an employer perspective, it really can change the culture of your company as well, because it goes from, everybody working in silos and, I know how to do this and I'm not going to teach you, to, an atmosphere of we're all learning from each other here and we're going to support you through this program, which then pays off because then that apprentice doesn't leave. Right? They feel invested in, they feel valued, and then they just continue to grow with the company.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. But I think one of the things that we should probably dig a little bit deeper in, because people always like to know, well, how much am I really getting paid, right? Because we didn't get into the nitty gritty of what, how the actual amount where you start off with and what you can end up with. And when you do get certifications, you are more marketable and you are more valuable. So we should talk about that as well, is what happens once you get those certifications and the kind of pay range that you can anticipate.
So do you want me to take that?
You can start.
Okay. So through all 3 occupations, the starting rate goes from $17 to $25. And obviously the tech support is at the lower end, and then the cybersecurity is at the higher. The ending wages go from $25 to $38.
Oh, wow.
So, they're livable wages and they're marketable wages. And those are the minimums. So that was when Manchester had to build the program, they had to set minimum requirements for a wage. And that's what they set, but an employer can come in and say, oh, we're not going to find anybody for $17 an hour. We know we're going to have to start them at $20, and they can do that. They can go higher, they just can't go lower.
And when you're talking about what the salaries are, I had a student, a past student, come to me over the summer, and he said to me, as soon as I got my certification from CompTIA, I told my boss, and I got a $7,000 raise.
Wow.
So, you know, these certifications really are valuable. And the way we teach it at the college, at Manchester Community College, is that my labs are open pretty much all week. And we try to make them available, and we try to make instructors available whenever a student needs them. So not only are they there for class, but they can come back to class anytime and work with our equipment.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and they do have scheduled pay increases as well. So once they're all what's called competency based. So as you know, an apprentice works through a certain set of competencies. Once they complete 25%, they get a pay raise. So within, you know, the tech support specialists, within a year, they could have a $4 pay raise, which is pretty, you know, incredible. You know,
Yeah.
I haven't gotten a pay raise in a year. You know, that's $4. You know,
Yeah.
so it's really the benefits are, and it's all laid out for the apprentice as well. So they see when they're going to be getting that, so they can plan ahead,
Right.
and they can do their budget, and it's also a motivating factor.
Yeah,
you know, to keep going.
I'll be motivated with that too.
Right.
Another thing with the apprenticeship program is that there's help that they can get from the apprenticeship program, from Ann's department, that will help them. So if they're struggling to get to work and their car breaks down, they can come back to us and we can try to help them through
Right.
that.
Right. And is there anything out of pocket for that person? Because that's the other thing people would think about. Like, okay, this is a 16-week program. You know, do I have to take a loan out to pay for this program? So can we kind of differentiate that so people fully understand?
And so really, it can vary, right? Because again, registered apprenticeship is really industry driven and employer driven. So we have a lot of apprenticeships across the state that we help build where the employer is covering all of the tuition.
Okay.
These are all credit bearing courses. So that certification course is 16 weeks, but then there's other courses on top of that, right? But they're all credit bearing. So they could be eligible for loans. With our grant that we have at Apprenticeship New Hampshire, we can provide anywhere from a one-time scholarship of $500 to $2,000, which can help offset some of that cost. And then, like Peter was saying, some of the support services. So if someone needed help with childcare in order to do that. But the employer's not required to pay for the related instruction. But when we are working with employers, we always encourage to at least do a reimbursement or a partial payment. Because again, it's reducing that barrier, knowing where we are and knowing that someone's coming in and maybe they're making $17, $18 an hour, and maybe they're not able to work full-time because they have to take some courses, right? And then to pay for those courses on top of it, it's going to be more beneficial for an employer to pay for some of that related instruction. And when they think of and when you see or hear about all of these sign-on bonuses that happen, come work for us and we'll pay you $5,000. Put that towards their education instead. You know, bring somebody in and invest in that education, and they're gonna give it back tenfold. And really, you know, again, it's just finding the resources. We also will help individuals connect to state resources to help them find funding. So things like WIOA funds and Work Now New Hampshire are all programs that we try to help individuals connect to who can help with tuition support as well.
And it depends on how the student comes to us too. Because if I get a student who wants to sign up for our cybersecurity program or even our cloud IT program, they come into the college as a student, they're then eligible for financial aid.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So right now, it seems like the biggest goal will be to get the companies to pretty much put their funds into this training, because then that will alleviate the need of, you know, anybody who's trying to get this 16-week certification to worry about, oh my God, this is another thing where I've got to pay for. So yeah, and
it isn't even 100% the funds. It's really the investment of time and energy and support for the apprentice, right? So, you know, Manchester Community College has taken a lot of the lift off of the employers. They've gone through, they've built all the standards, you know, they've worked with the DOL, they've hammered everything out, everything is all set up for them. All they have to do is sign a one-page agreement with Manchester to become a signatory employer. And that's where our team will help kicks in as well. So once they sign that, we do information sessions to recruit people into the program. I work with the high school space, so really kind of going down into high schools.
Yeah.
Maybe they've already taken some courses and build that pipeline from high school into these registered apprenticeships. And then working on, what's that reimbursement look like? Because most companies are going to have some kind of tuition reimbursement anyway.
Right.
And again, looking at where all of their funds are, the recruitment funds, the sign-on bonuses, how much money is being put aside for that, just the time for HR to bring somebody in, train them, have them leave. All of that funding can be put towards that one or two individuals to bring them in.
Right. Now that makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the course schedule, because I've seen some apprenticeship programs where you're working 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday. That is the commitment. It is a job. So what is the course schedule like? What should people anticipate if they sign up for this?
Depending on which program that they're in, there's probably 3 or 4 classes that they would probably want to take a semester. They could stretch that out, or they're taking less. It'll just take them longer to get through those classes. But the schedule varies, and we try to make it as easy as we can for students, because I know students have lives.
Right.
Life gets in the way, and we try to make that as easy as we can. But we do have a lot of hands-on stuff, so we do have to have them come into in the school. The A+ class, for example, I run a Saturday class. I've been doing that for years because I know students can't come in during the week, and that gives them the opportunity to come in, at least to get their foot in the door, maybe get a pretty decent job. Because if you have an A+ certification, you're going to get hired by somebody to do technical work.
Yeah.
And, now you have a job, maybe a better job than you had at McDonald's or the grocery store, and that'll free up some more time. And then we can work with the employers to try and work around their schedules to make it work for the student.
Okay. So it's not necessarily like a Monday through Friday,
No,
40
not at
hours a
all.
week schedule.
Yeah.
So how often? So it's a 16-week program. So how often would you say they're meeting within that 16 weeks? I should say.
A completely worst case, and it's not, and it will never come close to this. If they had to take 4 courses, say a week, they're only there for 8 hours for the week.
8 hours for the week.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that's paid plus whatever the hourly pay is for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they can do a lot of work offline.
Okay.
So there wouldn't even be that quite that bad having to come up to campus.
Okay. So is it like a hybrid program? Because
Yeah.
I've seen some paid apprenticeship that they're getting trained remotely. That's the biggest thing that people love remote work these days. So what is the structure? Is it in person, remote, hybrid?
So really, it's so employer driven that there's the classes, right? So it's credit bearing classes. You're going to take those when they're available.
Yeah.
And really when you combine the related instruction with the on the job training, the minimum is a year. So that's for the tech support, and then your network support and cybersecurity is a 2 to 4 year program.
Okay.
Because they're competency based, and then it's really working with that employer as to when you're going to achieve those competencies on the job, and then when you're going to do the class schedule. And so really that's the flexibility for the employer, which can also work for the apprentice too. In something, apprenticeships are a challenge. They can be hard. They are tough. For apprentices, because you're working, you're going to school, but the reward and the payoff is a secured job,
Right.
At the end, and you're working in a profession that you want to be in.
Yeah.
So
let's talk a little bit more in detail about the 16 weeks, because it doesn't seem like that's the end, right? Seems like there's still more training after that 16 weeks. So what are they doing and what are they getting within that 16 weeks?
So the 16 weeks will really prepare them. That's a semester, and so that really prepares them to take that A+ exam.
Okay.
And after that, there are multiple credit-bearing courses, which will really set them on the path to earn an associate's degree, which most employers are looking for. So, really, in essence, a tech support specialist position would really take about a year of on-the-job training and education. And then, the network support specialist in cybersecurity can be 2 to 4 years to complete. And again, they're earning money while they're going to work, and then they're taking all of those courses, and they're really set on a good path to get those degrees and then transfer even further if they wanted to.
Right. So they can pretty much after that 16 weeks align with a company and continue to get on-the-job training, hands-on training, and get paid while they're going to school.
Yes. Yep. And they could be doing the 16-week course. The ideal is that they're hired into the apprenticeship program and everything starts at the same time.
Right.
Because it's credit-bearing courses, it follows a semester schedule. So they may start with on-the-job training and then hop into the spring semester because our fall semester has already started, right? So maybe they're getting acquainted to the company and getting those hands-on skills first. And then they're going in and it's like, oh, that's what we're doing, and they can really make that connection and apply what they're learning in the classroom to their work experience.
Yeah. And we also have the other side too, where we have high school are now teaching A+ classes and Network Plus classes. So a student may already have those certifications or be ready to sit for the exam even before they sign up with us.
Right.
Wow, that's incredible.
Right, and that's what, not to muddy the waters even more, but that's what we would call a pre-apprenticeship, and that's the space that we really work in. So all of those students who are taking Running Start courses, which is just college courses that are taught at the high school level or early college, they're leaving and they're going to the college to take those courses. The courses that are aligned with Manchester Community College are part of this registered apprenticeship. So a company could be hiring someone who has 2 or 3 courses already under their belt, and they could be starting to work part-time while they're in high school. And it's really just an amazing, it really is an amazing, amazing tool.
No, I know, it definitely is. And, my neighbor who's across from me, their daughter is doing cybersecurity, and I was so happy when I heard that. But the other thing is, okay, let's get back to the courses. So someone who's doing cybersecurity, because we mentioned that there's a lot of companies right now that are just really kind of showing just how vulnerable we are. And we have to get our act together because these hackers are training, so we need to do the same thing. What is like a typical course for someone who's looking into cybersecurity? Like, how are they learning how to, see if there's a phishing attack or to see if there's someone who's trying to break into the network?
It's not like learning by doing it. We've got a network set up on campus, so students can actually work within the network. We teach network intrusion classes so that the students can see how that all works. We teach students how to, how the network works, so they know how. And there's a network right there on campus, so they can play with the network, and our network is completely separate from the school. Okay. So we're not interfering with it.
Right,
we can
right.
do what
Grades
we want.
are not getting changed, right?
We're not fooling around with the college system. But the students can sit there and work with it. And students have been designing stuff in the past on campus, and then we've implemented some of those things right on campus. Yeah. Right now we're talking to one of the carriers to put 5G in the classrooms so that the students can work with that and see how that all works, because the hacker probably isn't going to be sitting behind a computer for much longer. If they are now, they're going to be using a tablet. And how do we track that? How do we find that? And that's actually incorporated now into our classes.
Oh, look, is any coding or math? I always come down to math because math is not my favorite. So are there any coding or math skills they're going to have to learn?
We don't require any coding in the cyber program. Okay. You can do that, and sure, you can. We can teach you Python. We just didn't have enough room to stick that in there to get that all in there.
Lot, yeah.
It is, and unless you're going into a company that you're doing a lot of work with encryption, you probably aren't going to need that all that much. The smaller companies, did somebody hack into my network? Yeah. Okay, then what did they take and how did they get there? How do we keep them out? And so let's start there. Now let's start small and build up from there.
Right. What is the back door they were able to penetrate, and how do we close that door?
I tell my students, if you just go through a program and you're great at encryption, and you can tell me, well, somebody just hacked into my system. Well, I probably could have guessed that.
Right.
Because, my first question is, well, what did they steal?
Right.
And if you don't know how the computer networks work and how computers work, you don't know.
Exactly.
How did they get in? Well, gee, I don't know, because I don't know how the network works. Well, that's what we teach them. We teach them all of that so they know that right up front. And we teach them how to document all of those things.
And
Documentation.
yeah, and there's also a great program that's non-credit bearing, that's in open enrollment in cybersecurity in 2 different levels that lead into the degree program at Manchester Community College as well. And so, you know, there's a cybersecurity like exploration type course that's self-paced.
That's
So,
awesome.
you know, if someone is thinks that they might be interested, but they're not really
Right.
sure, they could register for that and give that a try. And then, you know, see if that really works, and then take the next step and go into the boot camp, and then go into the courses and see, you know, what will translate over into the apprenticeship program.
Yeah, and we have an articulation agreement between that part of the workforce development part, which is what Ann was just talking about, and my programs, which are degree programs. So we will take classes, or we will award them credits for some of the things that they've done in those classes.
That's right.
Right.
And so we're actually running out of time. So I guess what is the final takeaway? What do you want students who are in high school, or even students who are already at, you know, one of the community colleges, who are still kind of like, I don't know which career area I want to be in. Why should they look into pivot into, you know, either cybersecurity or tech support?
It's needed. Every employer is a tech support company. They all need tech. They need cybersecurity. They need tech. They need network. And so you're always going to be employed. And I think, you know, from my perspective, it isn't. I think that the student interest is there, and they're ready and willing to go. We had dozens of people who have already expressed interest. We need the employers to really kind of step up and be part of the program in order for us to deliver the registered apprenticeship that we're hoping we can bring and connect those students to. So, you know, we do have a information session on September 22nd that employers can come to at 4 o'clock.
And where's that?
It's at Manchester Community College.
Okay. I'll put that up. Is that on the website already?
It is. It's on our website, the Apprenticeship New Hampshire. It's on our Apprenticeship New
make sure to
Hampshire
add
website.
that.
And so they can connect right there, and they could come hear about the program, and
that's
they
for
could walk away.
employers?
That's for employers. Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and anybody who's interested, as I mentioned, we're on campus all the time. We're on campus all summer. The semester's starting next week. We'll be on campus. If an employer or a potential apprentice wants to get more information, they can come on in and talk to us, and we'll be happy to talk to them.
Yeah.
Or they can go online to the Apprenticeship New Hampshire website and get the information there too.
Yeah, and I think this is great, especially for you know, the high school students, you know, with the CTE, to get involved, to learn more, because they can, like you said, you have that pre-apprenticeship that's available, so that's absolutely fabulous. You know, you kind of get a head start before you finish high school.
Yeah. And if the student wants to sign up for a running start class while they're in high school, they're taking the class right there in high school, and they're getting the credit, the college credit for it. If they can do that, if that is offered, they should sign up for those.
That's perfect. So, well, Ann and Peter, it's a pleasure to have you here. We definitely need the workforce, and this is the best way to do it. The paid apprenticeship, you're trying to get people employed, learn, and get paid. I love that model. I think it's one of the best models, and I truly believe in that model 100%. And people want that model, by the way. They want this model. So thank you again so much for coming on GetTech Smart. If you're an employer and you want to get more information about the apprenticeship program, definitely reach out to Ann or Peter at Manchester Community College. And Ann, you're with the Apprenticeship New Hampshire. We'll put up that information as well, because you have something coming up on September 23rd, right?
22nd.
22nd. Off by a day.
Yes.
Okay, September 22nd. So we'll make sure we'll go on your website and get that information. So guys, cybersecurity is a big issue. We need more tech support. You know, people working hybrid, they're working remote. So the jobs are out there. Companies need people. If you're a company in New Hampshire, you need people. Well, you heard what's being offered. So thank you again for watching another fantastic episode of GetTech Smart. Stay tuned for another one.